Death Stranding 2 on the beach is only 5 days away from the time of recording this video. It is Saturday, the 21st of June. Now, I understand that Death Stranding was a pretty divisive game amongst the gaming community. It was something that you rather loved and you were really into the quote-unquote walking simulator portion of the game, and you liked the tedious nature and how the intricate story and cutscenes were something you really had to earn on your travel throughout the game, or you're someone who pretty much just thought it was boring and it was just a walking simulator. All of that's understandable. I get that. If you didn't enjoy the first game, I'm sorry. Want to stick around just to see my theory about the second game? You're still welcome. If you're someone who enjoyed the first game and you're going to play the second one, and maybe you're curious about this particular theory I have in mind, then obviously please stick around to see what I have to say. A like and a subscribe goes a long way to help the channel and helps me keep coming back to make videos for you guys. It's just a quick little impromptu video. I didn't have a script. I didn't have plans to make this. I just decided that, this was a theory that I've had for some time. Why not make, small little video about it? I do want to recap a couple things, kind of give some perspective on what it is that I think Death Stranding 2 is kind of centered around. So the first game, the whole point was connecting everyone, and it was kind of a play on where we were in society and how the internet was designed to bring, and social media was designed to bring people together. They told that story through a narrative of isolation and, a potential end of world situation. Yes, there are some really diehard Kojima enthusiasts who believe that, he saw the pandemic coming and so on and so forth. I think it was purely just a coincidence, but nonetheless, the game helped those people who saw those parallels really connect with the game and the main character Sam. So the second game, the whole slogan is "Should we have connected?" It's also, telling that story through a similar beat as the first. There's always a subplot to that particular narrative. There's Sam kind of traveling the country, bringing people together potentially to save the world. Same thing with this game, but in two different countries. But the subplot in the first game was the whole story of BB and where BB came from. Spoiler alert if you haven't played the first game, but the whole twist was that we were never seeing the story of the BB or Lou who Sam was carrying around throughout the entirety of the game. We were seeing the story of Sam himself when he was born and how he was like the original BB. But with that being said, this all kind of comes together and leads to my theory. So in the new game, we were introduced to a character referred to as Tomorrow, at least in the trailers, played by Elle Fanning. From what we know, she was a character that was introduced into the story when they found a cocoon that had literally come from the beach, and when they cracked the cocoon open, she was in there covered in tar, so on and so forth. And we've seen in different trailers sprinkled here and there, and even a small glimpse of some kind of fight scene, that she has her own type of powers that are related to the beach, similar to how Higgs did in the first game. From how she communicates to the character Rainey about real life births, and how she just kind of doesn't act as, I guess, normal or as a traditional person would, we can assume that maybe she spent a majority of her life on the beach. Maybe potentially she was born there, or she was born here, somehow got transferred without dying to the beach and made her way back later in life. So how does this relate to BB that I've brought up before? So we've gotten a notion from the trailer we got about a year or so ago that potentially Lou, the baby from the first game, has died at some point in this new game. This is the trailer from, it says a year ago. I thought it was longer, and they have this conversation in regards to BB.
Was it you, Higgs? Huh? Was it you that killed Lou? You still don't know, do you?
Okay, so Sam implies that Lou has died, and Higgs, or this new version of Higgs, who people have speculated is somehow a blend of Higgs and Amelie from the first game, or at least Amelie has had some kind of long-term exposure or influence on Higgs for so long. But what if, because time, as we've learned from the first game, just does not work in the same linear way, or at least not parallel to our reality. What if Lou dies somehow, or at least to us, she dies and gets stranded on this beach, is essentially raised by Higgs. And so after all of this time, she gets her own powers from rather Amelie or Higgs, and she learns how to harness them, and at some point she rather escapes, or in some weird plan is sent back by Higgs for whatever their plan is, or whatever diabolical scheme they have this time around. So, and then you might wonder, or at least I wonder, going through the first game just recently, there's kind of this motif with the first game on how information is constantly correcting itself in some way, shape, or form. Like in the beginning of the game, we're immediately introduced to the idea that every time Sam plugs in to the BB, he's seeing flashes and memories of the BB, which that was corrected. We saw things about how Sam learned things about his own family, where he came from, and how he finally figured out that Cliff Unger was his father later on. Or how Deadman, at the beginning of the game, we're told that he's just had so many different parts replaced that, you know, he considered him dead, when he ended up confessing later on that he's not even a real man.
That motherfucker back there is not real.
That he is just a construct of a bunch of different body parts, inherently making him Frankenstein's monster. These are just examples of how there's details that are constantly correcting themselves throughout the game, as if we're getting false information, so that when we do get these twists later on, they do make sense, but the information is given to us wrong beforehand, purely for the sake of reaction bait type stuff, which works. And it's why a lot of people who love the game, or love the twisting and winding story, why they love it so much. It's why I love it so much. But we do have a conversation about Sam and his wife Lucy and their son that they did not have, and that's why Sam is kind of a loner, and it ties into a bunch of things of why he names the baby Lou, so on and so forth. Here's a bit of that conversation.
Lou, how's little Lou doing? Sam, I owe you an apology. Lou was the name you were going to give your own baby if he'd had made it. I should have pieced it together sooner.
Don't know what you're talking about.
I found some records from 10 years ago. A death, sudden, in the middle of a town. Young woman in the prime of her life. Nobody knew until it was too late. A void out. Her husband, who was a member of Bridges, had dooms. He tried, but he couldn't get to her in time. The whole town was wiped off the map, leaving nothing but a big crater and him, because he was a repatriate. People wanted answers. Did the man hide his wife's body on purpose?
Okay, so see, this is automatically introducing two things that I want to explain and kind of see how it works into my theory of sorts. So in this story, or what happened to Sam essentially, is that Sam, with what are referred to as dooms, and it's kind of abilities that you get that come from long exposure to Corellium when you're born, or just somehow you're tied to the beach in some way, shape, or form. There's a more technical explanation, but whatever. He had a relationship with a woman named Lucy, who was at first his therapist, because he has asymphosophobia, which is when you have the fear of being touched by others. He also had all of these nightmares and these dreams that told him about the impending doom or a potential extinction way later on, that he just assumed were nightmares, but they kept reoccurring. After some time, him and Lucy ended up getting close, and they had a form of connection, and they become married, and Lucy becomes pregnant. When Lucy becomes pregnant, she ends up getting these same nightmares, and she ends up becoming extremely depressed herself and having her own kind of trauma that derived from Sam's dooms. This leads to her unaliving herself while Sam is gone. It causes a void out because he can't get to her in time. Then they explain that he is the only one left because he was a repatriate. He was able to survive or come back from the void out, which is essentially a nuclear sized explosion that comes from matter and antimatter colliding together. But what if in some way he wasn't the only survivor? What if his child, soon to be born Lou, had also survived and might have also been why his wife was getting effects from dooms, essentially, because it wasn't from Sam, it was from their child, their unborn child, Lou. We are also told that this Lou was supposed to be a boy, but what if they were wrong? In rare circumstances where they will do a test to see what the child will be ahead of its birth, of what gender it will be born as. There are instances where they're told it will be a boy or a girl. What if they were told it was a boy, but in reality, when the child survived, the child was actually a girl? So all this time, the child had survived unseen by Sam at some point and was collected by the same agents that found Sam as the sole survivor of the incident. And they took the baby and they put it into a container and created a BB. And for those who have played the game, you will also understand that BBs don't age whilst in the pods. Sometimes they live a little longer than others, sometimes they don't, but regardless of their time in the pod, they do not age. So what if by a matter of fate, this BB was utilized by people across bridges and finally winded up on a person named Igor, who Sam is introduced to in the beginning of the game, and kind of introduces the whole idea of a body going necro and how it can potentially lead to a void out, and how it is that the BTs are a threat to mankind. In Igor's death, who's currently using BB, finally BB is taken upon by Sam, who and then is reunited with her father unknowingly, because the entirety of the time they purely just had a bond to each other by fate and by their potential case of how they had similar backgrounds, or maybe that's how Sam unknowingly saw a little bit of himself in the child because he somewhere deep down may have remembered, or his subconscious remembered, that he was a BB. But what if it's not because of coincidence? What if it's purely just fate that somehow him and his unborn child reunited together? This being said, it would explain why Ella Fanning's Tomorrow would be someone who inherited really powerful dooms, because they were born naturally from someone who had dooms and spent most of her life after being killed off at a young age to harness her powers of dooms on the beach, eventually coming back, reuniting with her father once again as a grown woman. At this point, maybe not having a name or being renamed and being disassociated with her name Lou and named Tomorrow. Again, it's just a theory.
More film theories.
That's essentially my explanation. I know it's a little all over the place. Again, I didn't have a script, but I tried to break down all the different separate points and bring it together. And if there's any way, shape, or form that I can try to make it make sense, maybe I'll throw in a couple clips or edits here and there. My point is somewhere in the beginning, Sam unknowingly has a repatriate child of his own, like him, that he was going to name Lou, thought it was a boy, so when he's introduced to his child through fate later on, he doesn't realize that the baby girl in the BB pod, Lou, is his own child, biological child. She is taken out of the pod at the end of the game, and in the second game, he raises her as his own once again. Something tragic happens to her. She ends up living most of her life on the beach, potentially raised by Higgs, who it seems like may know her in some way, shape, or form. Somehow, rather intentionally or unintentionally, gets brought back to the real world through this cocoon of sorts and reintroduced and reunited with her father Sam once more. I don't know. Please let me know your ideas or thoughts about my theory. Again, I've seen similar theories throughout the internet that kind of connect some of those things. Like some people have also thought that Lou is Tomorrow in different ways. I've also seen some people thinking as well that Lou could somehow be Sam's biological child in some way, shape, or form, but they usually debunk their own theory when they're told, or they come back to the realization that Sam's biological child was supposed to be a boy, while Lou is a girl. That's why I was trying to see if maybe my theory ties all of that together so that both theories somehow coincide with each other. And I wouldn't put it past Hideo Kojima to make something super convoluted and even more complicated for us to wrap our head around. I mean, hell, this second game itself already makes it feel that way because they're traveling in a ship that travels through beaches and can transport them wherever they need to go. And hell, there was a man named Heartman who had a heart-shaped heart who lived by a lake that had two void outs simultaneously, which made the shape of a heart-shaped lake that he lived alongside, on top of the fact that his heart goes out every 21 minutes and is in the beach for 3 real-time minutes and hours, maybe even days on the beach. It's just a bunch of crazy stuff. There's a character named John McClane who is also referred to as Die Hardman. It's hard for him to die, or he's just run away from death if you've beat the end of the game. So many different things. Hell, there's a man named Tarman in this new game because he is a man who, from what we understand, lives on the beach or kind of controls Tar, maybe? Who knows? I've just been rambling on a little bit, and if you stuck around this long, I appreciate it. Let me know about my theory in the comments below, or what you thought about it. If I was just totally going on and made no sense, that's also fine. To all of my 2-legged, 4-legged, and 6-legged friends, yeah, I know you're out there. Are you guys going to be playing Death Stranding 2? I've already pre-ordered the game, and I did pre-order the controller that's coming along with it as well. You know, it might be a little crazy, but I'm definitely a die-hard fan at this point. Die Hard, didn't mean to do that. I'll see you guys later. Peace.